Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Grev, and welcome once again to another episode of the Rip Roaring Reds podcast. This is episode 8. We're going to be discussing Arsenal versus Nottingham Forest. I'm joined, as ever, by my co-host, Jace. How has your Sunday been?
Knackering. It was meant to be a rest day. Absolutely knackering. All household chores. Missed most of the football. Didn't watch any of it. So tiring. But on the other hand, you must have had the laziest Sunday, right? Because you are hobbling around the Emirates. So how's the foot?
Yeah, my foot is all right. I was hobbling around a little bit. For anybody that would care to know, I don't know what's happened to my foot. I've got no idea. As most people have told me, I'm just getting old. And so I braved the London streets to hobble around, and it's feeling much better today. I've had the opportunity to elevate it and rest it up, and also the excuse to watch pretty much all of the football all day. So yeah, I've enjoyed my Sunday. It's been pretty relaxing. Gone too quickly, unfortunately, though. That's the worst thing.
Well, what Grev hasn't mentioned was that I'm going to say this anyway. You might tell me off after. You weren't supposed to go to the football. You were getting moaned at, understandably, because your foot's really bad and because you've got to take the kids to Chessington World of Adventures on Tuesday.
Yeah, so I think my foot's going to recover just in time to get significantly worse by Tuesday. So thanks for putting me more in the doghouse. Really appreciate that, Jason.
I'm sure Sarah doesn't listen to this.
Well, I sometimes have on the podcast in the car just to listen back to my dulcet tones. So she's not going to enjoy this one. So yeah, appreciate that. Right, that's all right. Right, let's get into the introduction and we'll get into the talking points of this episode. We're going to be talking a lot about the Arsenal Forest game, of which we did win 2-1, but there's some really good talking points, whether it was which Arsenal were going to turn up, whether it's the changes in our 11, whether it's the new signings. We're going to talk about all of that and more. So let's get into that introduction. Saka. Saka! That is a diamond of a goal! It's Bergkamp. That's magnificent! This is my club. Fucking love this football club. Henry! What a goal! Gabriel Martinelli! He's scoring for Arsenal! Right. That is our introduction. And as always, we're going to start like we start every single episode with our Rip Roaring review. Tell me, Jace, it's only been one day since I've seen you. There's been a lot going on. We've obviously had a lot of chats already. But tell me, what's your big, bold stuff that's coming into this Sunday? Talk to me about it.
For me, I think just because you score the most goals in the Premier League does not mean you should be PFA Player of the Year. And yeah, screw it, I am biased, but Saka is got to be in for a shout this year if he continues his form. He was in for a shout last year, in my opinion, but that goal, which we'll talk about more, it lit my mind because we were right behind that goal, and I made that note right then. I was like, for me this year, I really hope he gets PFA Player of the Year. I think he's got in for a good shout, and I think just because you score all of the goals that win your team a league doesn't necessarily mean that you're the best player in the league, in my opinion. Makes you a strong contender, but there are other attributes that players bring to teams, and so I'm hoping he's in for a shout. That's mine. How about you? Come on.
I mean, yours was pretty bold, so I don't know. I'm going to be competing with that one. I don't know what I feel about that, Jace, to be honest. Maybe something for another time. Mine is the Barclays is back. I think that for me is the most exciting thing about the entire weekend. Football is back. I absolutely love it. I'm here for it. I'm a big, as Jace knows, a big fantasy football player. I spent a lot of my time in London with Jason and one of our friends, checking my phone, checking the scores, checking who's done what. I spent most of today watching the football, trying to figure out who did what and where and how and why. Got up and was close to celebrating. Definitely not celebrating a Chelsea goal by any means, but Chilwell did have a goal and then was disallowed. So I was pretty annoyed about that. But yeah, just excited just to have the Premier League back and have my weekend either ruined or elated by 11 blokes chasing around a football. So yeah, pretty exciting.
if anyone from the UK mobile networks is listening, if you could improve the signal at the Emirates Stadium for the benefit of Grev, so he can see his points updated live, he'd much appreciate it, because he was getting quite angry.
Yeah, I was. I'm literally, as soon as Saka's goal's in, I'm checking my phone. Right, where's my points? I want to see them. I want to get on the board. I want to see where I'm at. The phone signal at the Emirates is pretty atrocious. So yeah, I like Jason's call for arms there. If anybody's got any ties, reach out, do your thing. I want to get that improved performance real time, so I can get it when I need it. Good shout. It's a good shout. Right, we're going to move on out of our written review. I think yours was much bolder than mine, Jace. So I'm going to have to make sure that I go big next time we're around. We're going to start by a little tale called Jekyll and Hyde. Arsenal's performance, 2-1 victory, as we've already said, against Nottingham Forest. It was not exactly a straightforward affair and was definitely a tale of two halves. I'd like you, Jace, to talk me through what do you think about the first half and what do you think about the second half, and how did they differ, and was there a turning point that made those two things differ?
Yeah, there was a turning point, in my opinion. I felt like Arteta was, and I think he is, the fact that we'll talk specifically about some of the key changes and Partey at right back. But the thing I will say overall in regards of which Arsenal is turning up, we're still experimenting. So we don't always know which Arsenal is going to turn up. It's clear we're experimenting because there was a change in the formation at the back compared to City. And you could have argued that the City performance should have been our starting lineup, but it wasn't. So in regards to which Arsenal is going to turn up, I think until we've I know you said that we are going for a squad that's more unpredictable this season, which means we might see not quite as a settled starting 11 as we've seen last season. At the same time, I think that's also going to make it really hard to understand which Arsenal's turned up, especially for experimenting with formations and tactics that we haven't always played so regularly compared to last year. It's actually going to be really hard to predict. What I would say, just from what we saw, dominated the first half. I think we were frustrated not to go in more than 2-0 up. I think I think 3-0 would have been perfect scoreline.
Was it you said to me that 2-0 was the most dangerous scoreline, or is that
because one if you go in at 3, the game's dead. If you go in at 2, they're back in it with 1 goal, and we'll talk about in a sec the last 20 minutes, which weren't fun, because this is the problem, right? When we talk about what Arsenal turn up, we begin first half, we showed why we were where we were last season, why we were one of the best teams in the league. The counter-attacking football, but also the domination of possession. Just Saka. I mean, Saka's going to have a different challenge this year because Saka's just been doubled up on by every team he plays against, right? And they still can't handle him. It takes 2 and they still can't do it. Which is great to see. But we were roasting Martinelli right in front of us. Like Serge Aurier had it just, mate. I don't know how he's still playing in the Premier League. You can see he's kind of a good footballer, and he's played for Tottenham, he's played for PSG, but he's past it now. He can play in another league, but he can't play in the Premier League.
He has the pace for it, right?
Well, yeah, he's a muscly lad, Sergio Aurier. You can tell he's kind of looked up close. He looked very muscly and very stacked. But when you're playing against Martinelli, who can just knock it past you, or as he did, beautiful nutmeg, and just run past you, he beat him every time, and he was getting very angry, and it was hilarious to watch, absolutely hilarious. So yeah, I mean, going forwards, we're great. So first half, we'll talk about the goals in more detail later, but really good first half. And also, I will just mention the work rate. Saliba particularly was great with his ball recovery. The second half, we looked tired in particularly certain positions. We got caught on the counter, and that's when we let the goal in. and then it looked more flat the second half. The second half was a bit more flat. We didn't have as many obvious goal scoring chances. And then we were in control of the game, but we just got caught on one counter attack. That was the only attack that I can really remember in the game, especially the second half. And we were punished. And then it just made the last 10 minutes, especially, just like completely unnecessarily nervy. It felt very familiar Arsenal performance. We held out for the win, so we can't complain. I think 2-1 doesn't reflect. It should have been 3 or 4-1. Ironically, I said 4-1 for the score as well, so I'm really peed off because it should have been 4-1. So yeah, that's like a very long-winded summary of how I felt the game went. But like, tell me what were your standout points from the game? Like, what stood out to you about that performance?
Like you kind of said, some of the work rate was, absolutely brilliant from start to, well, I'd say start to finish, probably start to 70 minutes. Particularly, like you say, maybe Saliba, Martinelli in particular, Rice, all very good at ball recovery. Our press, again, so I said this in the City game, we had a really patient, thought out, aggressive press that really suffocated any balls they had. So every time there was a kind of pass out from the back for them, we kind of swarmed around them, red shirts all together, kind of doing it, and it made them really difficult for them to play out from the back. I think there was probably a 15 to 20 minute segment where we camped in their half, where I think when it was the second half, the start of the second half at least, we were on the opposite side to where we were attacking. And we could see we weren't seeing anything because they weren't really getting into our half, and we kind of penned them down. But admittedly, I think you said it there, didn't really create very much from it. But I would say, so they didn't create very much either. I think they actually had a higher XG than us, which was quite surprising considering they didn't. I mean, I know that we didn't create very much, but neither did they.
Yeah.
In reality.
Let me ask you a question then. So the second half was flat. And you're right, we were penned in their half, but we didn't create. So we went in 2-0 at half-time, absolutely dominating the game. We were thinking, right, we're going to win this 3-4-0 or 3 or 4-1, because as I say, there's always one. There's always one goal we concede. But do you think then we've still not solved the problem of the low block? Because that's what it felt like they were playing. It just felt very familiar to games last season, right? They knew that they were 2-0 down. They probably weren't going to win the game. If they'd have continued to be more open, we'd have caught them on the counter-attack and maybe scored more. So they just played the low block. So my question to you is, can we still not break down the low block?
No, I think we tried. And I think what we did was exactly what I thought we would do, which is move Havertz to the 9 position. I think when I've talked about versatility and unpredictability in past podcasts, I think that is how Arteta views it a lot of the time. We know we came unstuck a lot last season against the low block where we couldn't break it down. And I think the majority of our ability to break that down would be over the top. And that's where Havertz as a 9 was probably something we tried. I think it was a little bit too late, unfortunately. And the reason why I think it was too late was because of the Timber injury. The Timber injury changed the game and the way in which we approached that game. His going forward was really defensively he was so astute, but going forward he was also really, really good as well. And he really did allow that extra man in midfield that we kind of needed to unlock their defense and then put those balls in. As soon as he became injured, and what do we do? I can't remember. We didn't replace him with Gabriel straight away. I'm trying to remember who we replaced him with once it happened.
Tomiyasu.
Like, Tomiyasu is not Urian Timber. He's solid, but I don't think he's got enough run of games to kind of know exactly what he offers. He doesn't offer as much going forward. He also can't invert the same as Timber has done. So we weren't quite as versatile and dynamic as we normally are with him on the pitch. And it kind of just didn't allow us to play our football. I think Arteta was forced into that change because it's not the change you would have wanted to have made.
Why do you think that we're putting Tomiyasu in rather than Tierney? Because we're seeing Tierney, rumours that he's on his way to Sociedad on loan. When we signed Tomiyasu, we were Tierney, and we were basically looking for a right back. The equivalent of Tierney was left back, and we brought in Tomiyasu. we're really happy. That was 2 seasons ago, and we felt that the defense was evolving at that point, and it was, because the players we had before them, Cedric Suarez, I think was who Tomiyasu came in to replace, and it was an upgrade. But now we've evolved our wing backs even further. Zinchenko, Timber, Ben White. So we've stepped on a game. So my question is, should we be bringing Tomiyasu on at left back?
I mean, for me, because I agree with you, I think that I'd be looking to shift Tomiyasu rather than Tierney. I think the only reason we're probably not doing that, as I suspect there's more value in Tierney to be unlocked. And I've talked in previous pods about incremental gains. I don't think the incremental gains between Tierney and Tomiyasu are that great. And as such, you look at the value in this. If you're a mathematician, you probably look at that one being the more astute for us to make. But I just don't. It's hard, right? Because I think it's pretty clear Tierney's not in. He's obviously on his way out. He's not even featuring on the bench, which is just odd, because I think we've got so many right back options, like you say. Maybe not as many left back, but maybe Zinchenko, once Zinchenko comes back, and I think he'll be ready for the Palace game next week. I think we'll be assessing what happens with Timber. I don't think I've not read anything else that would give me more clarity on what his injury is or like. Seemed in the ground it should be a bad one by the looks of things. The reason why I say that is because it was just innocuous. It was nothing around him. He'd obviously had the injury just on the stroke of half time. And obviously, I think those two things have to be unrelated now, unless because he came back out, they must have assessed him at half time and recognized that he was still able to play the rest of the game. And the fact there was no one around him, it's not like a knock, it's not like an impact injury. I worry that it could be bad. And then if it is, then I think we keep Tierney. But I suppose the assessment is yet to be seen.
Yeah, I mean, we'll find out, I guess, during the week when news starts to come out. And I guess he won't have his assessments done properly until today and tomorrow. So we're not going to know that yet.
Another thing about that as well, though, is if we do end up finding out if it's bad, then we're going to be we're going to be in the market, and people are going to know that we can be played with, because we're at a risk. We need something to fill that gap, or we can't sell. So they might lowball us off us on Tierney, for example, for us to get somebody else. I'm just not sure. There's not a good way to look at it.
I don't think we sell Tierney. I mean, what's the point in trying to buy another player in that we don't want? Because if Timber's fit, then that player we're buying in or bringing in isn't getting a game, and you've got Zinchenko anyway. So I think the worst case is we keep Tierney or we keep playing Tomiyasu there. I think but I don't see us buying anyone.
It's such an odd thing, and I've said this before. I don't fully understand how you can get Tomiyasu, a natural right back, to then fill in the left back when you have a left back. It just seems odd.
Well, he's left centre back for Japan, so clearly he can play with his left foot, they think. So that's why.
Yeah.
Should we move on?
Yeah, let's move on. We talked about the first half and the second half, a little bit some of those players, but we're going to talk about now the changes. So, like you said, we did make some changes going into this game compared to the City game. And the thing I'm most interested to hear from you, Jace, is do you feel that those changes were justified? And if you do, why do you think they were justified?
So, definitely changes up front were justified by the performance that we saw by Eddie. And I think we've got a section for Eddie, so I won't talk much more about that. The right back changes, clearly, my analysis is that I think Arteta identified that he still wants to experiment. And that's why you saw Thomas Partey at right back. Because when I saw him, when you said to me outside the ground, when you showed me the squad and you went, Partey's right back, I was like, oh, sorry, about to swear, but I wasn't confident, basically. A little bit of trauma from the game we were away at Forest at the end of last season, one of the games where we threw bottled brackets the league, because we played Partey at right back, and that was because we felt that we could play Jorginho in the centre, But we really miss Partey when he didn't play in the central midfield position the end of last season. This was a slightly different kind of change, though. It definitely worked fine for the first half. We were amazing in the first half. Thomas Partey, I thought, played well in the first half. He didn't play half the time at right back. He was inverted in the central midfield position. And so on the attack, it gave us depth in the midfield because we had Odegaard, Rice, Zinchenko, and Havertz. Sorry, not Zinchenko. Odegaard, Rice, Partey, and Havertz.
He played so much like Zinchenko. You're getting it mixed up, James.
Well, but this was the thing, right? We had a depth there, and then and then we were good with ball recovery with Saliba. So we kind of squashed any counter attacks that they did have when there was maybe a gap that Partey wasn't filling it right back because Saliba was so quick, he was over there and covering. So that works really, really well. However, the second half, we saw the fatigue and the we saw what were my concerns come to life, which is they kind of started to target that space more aggressively when they did get a chance. When they got a couple of attacks into our field, one that was actually an attack that actually led to some form of actual genuine threat, and they scored from it. They didn't target the left side of the pitch. They targeted our right side of the pitch, not our left side of the pitch. And Partey was in no man's land, and that was where we let the goal in. So it didn't work. He got caught a few times being short, and that's where I don't know if that's because he's not played the position too regularly, and he's just not, he's still learning it. But at that point, it all changed. Gabriel straight away was a substitution, right? We went soon as we went down, that one goal down, Gabriel was on. And we went back to our standard back four minus Timber because Tomiyasu was already in. And we did look more solid then. It was a pretty, and we were still in their half for most of it. So, we kind of went back to a formation that we knew worked, and it was fine. We rode it out. It was a bit nervy. It always is. Yeah. So were the changes justified? I wouldn't have done it personally, but you have to trust in a manager. If he feels he still needs to experiment with that and make those kind of changes in games that he feels are low risk, then we have to trust that Arteta knows what he's doing. At the end of the day, we came away with the 3 points. I would have liked bigger goal difference, but it is what it is. Do you think the changes were justified?
Straight answer, no. Like you, I probably would have done something a bit different. I think the biggest thing that stood out to me, well, firstly, that when they did counter-attack and scored that goal, I don't think you'll see a better counter-attack and football goal this season. I thought it was perfect. Everything they did moving forward was very, very good. And I just don't think you'll see a better one all season. I think they did fantastic in transition. I think they played the ball really, really well. And I can't fault them for what they did. I think the main thing from us is, like you say, Partey was playing that position. He was caught out and Saka was having to do the recovery. I think we saw 3 attempts down that right-hand side in the space of about 5 to 10 minutes. They all were counter-attacking football. And they all were targeted on that side. And Saka luckily recovered at least one of them. I suspect the second one as well. He was doing all the running that Partey couldn't do. Partey effectively was just very leggy, very lethargic. And I think it just doesn't have enough in the tank to be able to play that position for 90 minutes or 110, whatever it ended up being because of all the extra time.
Yeah. I mean, he's still playing his midfield game. He was still doing what we needed him to do in midfield, but then he's also got a cover and right back. So, I can understand that fatigue perspective.
Well, I think he's just got to be faster as well in that transition in the central midfield role that he plays. He doesn't necessarily have to recover as quick, and I think the signing of Rice, which we'll talk a little bit about in a minute, was one of the reasons why he now doesn't have to do that as much because Rice can. He's just got such a great engine. I just don't understand And my wonder is here, and you're talking about unpredictability. Is this a game that we can afford unpredictability at the expense of a goal? Yes, I think it is. Because I think this is a game that we look at, a home game against Nottingham Forest. We're going to come away with 3 points, even if we look a bit fragile. And, I don't think we're going to be doing that away at Anfield. Put it that way.
I don't think we should be doing it in any way away game. However,
Luton,
I disagree with your comment. And even in a home game, we shouldn't be doing it, in my opinion. We went to Southampton last year. We went to Brentford last year at home. Those games, teams, especially Southampton, bottom of the league, nothing to play for. We're pretty much already relegated. And
Southampton just have our number. They just have our number. They just honestly, they are the new Chelsea to us.
Well, they're down now, so it doesn't matter. But
exactly, so we might get away with that without a bogey team this year.
No, that'll be bogey team will be Brighton.
Yeah, they've also done us quite well. Yeah,
that'll be our bogey team. I think De Zebra's got Arteta's number a little bit. I think.
I mean, I was going to say this. After when's all said and done, and Arteta does move on for whatever reason that might be, I would love us to get De Zebra next. I think he is exactly the type of manager that could be a good next step and next evolution of what the plan that we've got at Arsenal is all about.
Well, guys, you heard it here. When Grev's calling for Arteta out in December, De Zebra's in.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be clear. I am never one for having a manager out. Even at the worst of times with Arsene Wenger, I was still very much an Arsene Wenger advocate because of the things that he'd done for our club. I know that you weren't quite as had quite the same affinity that I did. But I think both of us were never fully Arsene Wenger out brigade.
I was never fully Arsene Wenger out because of a major respect for what he's done, and I think even though I felt maybe a change would be good for the club, I was never vocally aggressive as a lot of our fans were. I was just like, as fan, like between you and I, we're talking like, come on, we probably do need a change. But I also felt, if anything, it was the wrong time. But actually, hindsight is great. I would have kept Wenger for longer and rode through the hard time and got through the other side, because Unai was the only manager I've ever genuinely been like, he's got to go. I lost my patience with Unai Emery.
I think maybe seeing some of that second season syndrome at Aston Villa after yesterday's late game.
Yeah, we might be, especially with the money they spent. They got absolutely spanked, didn't they, by Newcastle?
They were honestly. I watched the second half and absolutely ripped apart.
Not good.
I mean, Tyrone Mings went off early injured. He's quite a big sort of them. Yeah, I know we're getting into some other other teams' topics, another thing for another day. Go on, Jace. You can introduce this part.
So what? Comparing the new guys, so the new signings. So, Grev, let's talk about the first subject in here. Havertz. Your perspective on the Havertz performance.
So I've seen a lot, and obviously watching the game, I think me and Jason quickly before the pod started, we had a quick discussion, and watching the game in the stadium versus watching it on highlights or watching it on TV are two very different beasts. You don't get to see a lot of the play that happens, particularly in the where we were sat. We were sat in the lower concourse of the clock end, and so our view is directly along the pitch rather than say in the middle. So you don't necessarily get to see the spread and the length and the depth of the pitch. But I would say, from what I did see of Havertz, he does everything fine. He does exactly kind of what you expect him to do, and he does it fine. It's a general 5 or 6 out of 10 performance. There's nothing that's going to set the world alight. He got the opportunity again to score goals, and a couple of shots that he managed to get away. Neither of them truly came off. The one thing I think I said to Jace in the ground, he just looks so disinterested. He just looks like he can't. He's like he can't be bothered. I don't know what it is. He's very slow. He's very plodding along, It just doesn't compute to me. Arteta must have seen something.
So you do remember what you said in the ground then?
I do.
That was my quote I had for you when you said you couldn't remember. You referenced the disinterested. Particularly, I remember calling it out, and I was, as a fan in the moment in the ground, really I was frustrated by what I saw in those a couple of those moments. Particularly, there were some times when Mark we put him into. I think Eddie came off and he went into the number 9 position, and Martinelli had the ball, or was it Trossard? I can't remember. Maybe I can't remember who had it because Martinelli came off for Trossard, but they had the ball on the left and they were going, but they were going with no one to then pass it to once they got where they needed to go, sprinting down the pitch. And you were, I was angry. You were vocally going, run, like at Havertz, because he just wasn't moving. He was just so, like, to your words, he was disinterested. It's like, why are you not going? Like, I don't know what he's been told
even
to do.
Even if you don't think you're going to make it, like you say, you've got to try. I know we see this in like casual football, but most people just give up.
It's like, I mean, there's like 3 players around Trossard here. Like, he's not going to, like, you got to give your teammates some support. And that was the thing that in the ground, I remember, like, particularly riled us up. And it led me to ask you another question, I created another question I thought about. Are we going to have a problem with Havertz's body language? Because we did with Mesut. And as much as we recognise that there's a similarity to Mesut's body language, and we know that might be the type of player, and I have to accept that, I think that there is a difference between having a disinterested body language and then actually just running because you need to run. There's a difference between the two. And so I just wanted your perspective on that. Like, do you think we're going to have a problem with his body language? Do you think this is going to be a problem for us?
I don't. And the reason I don't think that we will have a problem is because of Arteta. Arteta is a ruthless, absolutely ruthless manager. We've seen it already with the likes of Ramsdale and Raya happening right underneath us right now. We saw it with Aubameyang with his first foray into disengaging and disagreeing with the manager. Arteta does not stand for anything that goes against his non-negotiables. And I think this is one of them. I think if you're not giving 100% every single time that you're not playing with the vigor that he wants you to play with, you'll soon see the back of the door. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of chances that he's going to get to play like this. Like I say, I do feel that Arteta must see something in him that is different to what we see. He's coming in the Xhaka role, and one thing that Xhaka did do a lot of last season is score more goals. He scored a lot more than he ever had done before playing in that position. And that's really what Havertz was supposed to elevate up beyond the Xhaka role to score even more. And right now, we're just not seeing what kind of... We've seen him get shots away, but he's not doing those same kind of late runs into the box that Xhaka was doing. He's actually finding himself, like you say, in the number 9 position, tight areas in the box and having to snapshot away and not necessarily them coming off. So I don't think we're going to have a problem. And if we do eventually do have a problem, he isn't going to be playing in that position for very much longer. We've seen it plenty of times before where those players stop performing and then they see the door or they'll see the bench.
Yeah, that makes sense. Talk to me a little bit about Declan Rice's performance.
I suppose it's a little bit like two sides of a coin, right? In that midfield position. Declan Rice, on the other hand, did do a lot really well this game. Was probably unlucky not to score as well. I think he did get a shot that was quite well struck a little bit further out. The usual, Thomas Partey 30, 35 yarder that everyone in the ground is shooting, shoot. And we've been there, Jason, going, no, do not shoot, because Thomas Partey scores about 1 in every 400 of those. It was on target from Declan, which was good. He had such a great engine. His ball recovery is absolutely fantastic. I think that is going to save us in the region of 5 goals across this season. Last year, we were caught out several times in that Xhaka party pivot because neither of them necessarily have the pace for ball recovery. And thus, Declan Rice kind of fills in that gap. So he was really, really good. He ran throughout. He's a good leader as well. I think I've seen some clips afterwards. Like I say, you don't necessarily see some of this in the ground, but he's shouting where players need to go. He's directing traffic. He's telling them where gaps to fill in. I think there's one point where he's like telling Havertz the position he should play, what position he should come into, and instructing him where he should be filling in. He understands the system already, I think, and I think we're yet to see the best from him. But I think he's fitting in really, really well. And the one thing I would say as well, I saw a little clip of him leaving the Emirates in his car, and it was absolutely hounded by about 300 Arsenal fans. I mean, if it was me and that was my car, I'd be like, get off my car, because that's probably ruined now. But I suspect he's never had this much affinity with a fan base. Like, I just can't see it at West Ham. I think he loves being Arsenal. I tweeted as well. He was singing the lyric to "The Angel" by Lewis Dunford.
Yes,
he's pushing all the right buttons for Arsenal fans for sure. So yeah, loving it so far. What do you think? Because I think that you've been screaming throughout the pods for the Rice and Party pivot. We've got it pretty much on the bounce now. It seems like that's probably going to be the way we go for a lot of our games. I know we didn't see it particularly at the start of this game, but it certainly came into fray against Man City. What did you think about Rice's performance?
Yeah, a solid 7 out of 10, like kind of what we need from him every game. And I mean, I'm happy for him to shoot. Why? Because we know he can score. We know he can score some beautiful goals. We saw a couple of amazing goals at West Ham last year. I mean, we saw him shoot, and you were mentioning the party reference. I was celebrating a goal that didn't go in. Do you remember the one right in front of us? Because there was a massive gap. There was a massive gap that the keeper had left to the right side of his goal, and Rice saw that and he shot from outside the box. I saw the replay on TV. It looks a lot further away, but it didn't look that far away from where we were. And I was like, there's no way keeper's getting to that. And it was going straight in the bottom corner. I was celebrating pretty much before it even, and somehow the keeper saved it. And I just couldn't believe that it didn't go in. So yeah, no, I'm
goalkeeper, Jace, that's why.
USA.
Let the dogs out.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy with his performance. We didn't miss Xhaka at all that game, in my opinion. He fitted in nicely. Good energy, solid passing, kept the ball moving. And I think I know what I want to see now. I don't want to see Partey inverted right back again. I said I didn't want to see it before the game, if I'm honest. It did work okay in the first half, but I don't want to take the risk. Ben White, right back all the way. Saliba and Gabriel at the back. Timber, Zinchenko on left back. I want to see Partey and Rice in the middle. I want to see Odegaard. Obviously, his standard's going to be there. And if it's not Jesus, I want to see Eddie. And I want Havertz on the bench for now until he has a bit more time in training and maybe some League Cup games and a couple of games in the Champions League against smaller teams to learn those roles that he needs to play. That's what I want to see at the moment. And yeah, I like the pivot. I think it works fine with those two. So there was one other signing. We mentioned his injury already. We don't know the excess of the injury, but talk to me. One question I had: who plays left back next game if he's not going to be playing? With Timber.
Yeah, I mean, I think Zinchenko is going to come into left back. I think he's already in full training. He will just fill in, and it'll be our back four from last season: Zinchenko, Saliba, Gabriel, and White. What happens when Timber comes back depends on Zinchenko's performances when he gets those games under his belt. But I would say from this game in particular, once again, every time we've seen him play, you can't usurp him because he's making that position his own. He's been very, very good, very dynamic. That drop of the shoulder, that shimmy, as Jace keeps calling it, love to see it.
He did it again.
He did, and he was just,
He did do it again.
he just fits so naturally in that position, and I don't feel like we've lost a step in that position when he plays it. Like, he's so weird to kind of think naturally you're right back, fitting in at the wrong position, also doing a different role and system, and he felt like he's always played there for us, and so really disappointed that he has picked up a knock, and hopefully it's nothing too serious. I hopefully wish him all the best to come back and have a good recovery. But yeah, was an excellent game from him. The first 45 minutes was exemplary.
Do you know what? This is going to sound hilarious. I'm not going to name people, but I kind of get the Timber at left back thing. I'm right-footed. I can play with my left, but I'm right. And I used to play for AFC Newbury at right back, but I occasionally got put at left back. In fact, then I ended up getting put at left back all the time, even though there was a left back who was actually left-footed, and I kept him on the bench. And don't know why, but I can see, long as you know my point I'm trying to make is, because I'm not this is amateur football I'm talking about here, but my point is, if you can learn and understand the position and know what's required of you, it's pretty easy to pivot the side, and you don't, the left foot isn't necessarily as crucial to the role. If you're running to the byline and putting crosses in, yeah, fine, you've got to have a left foot, but yeah, he in what he's doing, which is playing left back, winning balls, making passes, he can do that with his left or his right, and then he's inverting and stepping in, which again is coming to more of a midfield role. So then it doesn't really matter which foot you're playing on to an extent when you're doing that inverted role. So yeah, I think it's fine, and I think the way we're playing it works, because then you have Rice coming across to the left anyway. So
yeah, I might as well. While I'm here, I'll get my phone out, Jason. I'm just going to call up Arteta and let him know that it's another left back option if he wants it. You want me to? I'll just fill it in for you. If that's all right.
Yeah, sure, go for it. I mean, I'll play 40 minutes. I'll give him 40, 45 minutes.
He likes 60 to 70, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, okay.
Oh. All right. Well, while I've got my phone out, then, Jace, I'll tell you what I'm also going to do. I'm going to dial goal for Eddie. So the title of this segment is Dial Goal for Eddie. A proper striker's performance. We have waxed lyrical on previous pods about who would be the striker, and maybe it wasn't, all the dominoes haven't naturally fell in the way that we expected them to get us to here. But tell me, Jace, what did you think about his performance today? Did you enjoy it? Did you like it? And I think you already said it once. It seems like to me you believe he's going to be the number 9, at least going forward for the short term.
Yeah, simply because he is filling in the role that we need him to fill in. We discussed this in a previous pod, but when he comes off the bench, he's not as effective. But when he starts, he's brilliant, and he proved that last year, and he proved it the year before, actually, the season before last year, when he was replacing Lacazette, and then he came on. He started from the beginning, and he was brilliant. I mean, his pressing of Forest was amazing. He was bursting a gut. He made quite a few challenges in the press. His ball recovery was brilliant. Like, when the ball dropped in the box, he was there. He was going in for challenges, and a lovely take and finish. Slightly fortunate with a tiny deflection, I think we saw on the replay. So it wasn't as straight as a bullet as it looked from where we were stood behind the goal. But yeah, lovely performance. And yeah, for me, no brainer. If Jesus is injured, he should be there. And do you know what? I kind of also just want to say, if he continues over the next few games to play this way, and say Jesus isn't back by the Spurs game or the United game, and he's still playing like that, Jesus has got to earn the shirt back. If Eddie keeps scoring, Eddie's scoring one goal a game, or one goal every other game, because Saka, Martinelli, or Trossard are coming in with goals, and he's continuing to put in performances how he is. Jesus has got to earn the shirt back. He's not just a default, go straight into the starting lineup. Yeah, impressed by Eddie. Good performance. But you mentioned here Fox in the box and made himself a nuisance. So, what's your perspective?
Yeah, I did. He was, like I say, a proper number 9, getting himself about, mucking into everything that was going on, causing problems for the defense. I think, like you said, there was one time where he put pressure on Turner, panicked, and he sliced the ball, and we were kind of unlucky. You know, any other day you might get one of those on target if you've got that little deflection off when he's kicked it out. We see a lot of slander, a lot on the timeline in Facebook and in Instagram about Eddie Nketiah because he's not Gabby Jesus. And I think we even we weren't sure at the start of the season who's going to play where and why. And we're pretty clear now. I think 99.9% sure that Balogun is out the door. He's playing amongst the undesirables of Cedric Suarez. Who else was there? Sambi Lokonga, Nuno Tavares. And Balogun. And Eddie's the choice. And I think partly why, and I've talked about, he is just the utmost professional. He is so well spoken. We listened in the car on the way home on Talk Sport. He is so eloquent in his speech. He is so engaged in the way he discusses the game. He is obviously so aware of everyone's thoughts and feelings towards him. And I think he works really, really well with the manager. I think the manager gets a lot of faith in him. And he's a Hale Ender, right? So for us, we like him and would love to see him do well. And it's so, I do feel, and maybe we'll see if this gets vindicated or not in future pods, against the Forest, against Palace in particular for the next game, a Fulham, a Bournemouth, I think that Eddie will always do well. I think he's a striker that has found a really easy level within those games. And I think you said this on a previous pod, that when we played against City, the reason why he wasn't picked is because of the difference that Havertz will be able to bring to those games where you're playing against different opposition. And so maybe we will see that. It'd be interesting to see how and when Gabby Jesus does make his way back into this squad, where and if he fits in. Or maybe we just mix it up depending on the opposition, part of that versatility. But yeah, like a proper striker performance today.
Yeah. And just to add to that point you mentioned there, like, there's a couple of teams in the league I don't have as much confidence with Eddie, only because when you put Eddie in there, and even with Gabby, I think it's a process. I think it's a challenge. City and Liverpool are two teams that I think with a small, low center of gravity striker, we struggle. Like we're not beating Van Dijk at times. We're not beating a Diaz. We just have a bit of a challenge in those games with that kind of striker. And I think that's when you do use Havertz, and that makes sense. And I think there was some stats going around, like Havertz wins 2/3 of his ball in the air duels. He's got good stats for that kind of game, which I'm happy with. He doesn't have to score in those games, in my opinion. I know that people will say, well, if he's playing in that position, he expects goals. I know you've said that you expect goals. If we're only playing him in certain games for tactical reasons, I don't care if he scores or not. As long as he's winning the duels he needs to win, he's bringing the ball down, he's turning on the go, he's sit and then allowing the counter-attacks to flow with Martinelli and Saka, finding the holes, and they're scoring. I don't care. But yeah, I think Eddie is more suited. Even United, Eddie had a good game against United last year. Even United, I'm happy for Eddie to play. But there's a couple of particular teams in the league where I think we have to have a bigger striker. I wanted to just give a mention and talk about Bukayo because of his goal. I know we didn't. I don't think we've got him on our topics list to talk about, but we sat right behind the goal in the clock end, so we saw all of the goals. And I think just the moment that ball hit the net, I think we both turned to each other, mouths open wide, kind of. We're just like, bloody hell! That finish was sublime. It was beautiful. And Saka just had one of his games when they can't deal with him. at least in the first half. Well, he was exceptional in the first half, and they ended up doubling up on him. But then you bring in Odegaard to support him. You find the gaps.
There was a triple up at times when we were seeing it. They just, like you say, teams have become a bit wise to the cut inside from Saka, and so they are. But it does free up other positions on the pitch to kind of drive forward as well. Then,
yeah, but I think you saw Ben White's interview with might have been ESPN or one of the someone before beginning of the season. He basically said his job is to make Saka look like the best player in the world. You know, he's making those committed runs, knowing he won't necessarily get the ball. And then he made quite a few of those overlaps yesterday in front of us, and then Saka still chose to cut in and do what he does. So it's working that side. It doesn't matter how many they double up on us. When you've got Saka and Odegaard in that space, you can put as many people as you want there. They'll find a way through. So yeah, impressive performance from Saka. So I just wanted to give that a reference.
Yeah, no worries. Lot to talk about on this one, but like I say, maybe not enough room for Saka. We've obviously talked about him a lot, but the next topic was about the atmosphere at the ground and maybe the part in which the ballot, so the change to Arsenal's ticketing system, has potentially played in that atmosphere. I'd be interested if you had any thoughts or feelings toward this. I certainly do, Jace. I'm just interested to see if they cooperate with what you're feeling towards it.
Well, I want to give you the floor first because you said you're quite aggrieved by this, understandably. That gives you a bit of a view on my thoughts. So go on, floor is yours, Grev.
So I am agree only because of where. So we commonly sit when we go to the games in the clock end, the lower concourse. It's very, very close to the Ashburton Army, who I think we both kind of agree have brought an evolution to Arsenal's atmosphere. I wouldn't necessarily say it's all because of them, but they've played a significant part in our transformation as a club. They have embodied the spirit of our crowd. They have got the team going. They have introduced new songs, new chants. And unfortunately, it seems this season they've had their allocation cut by a significant amount. And the way in which the ballot works, so for those who might not be too familiar with Arsenal's system, previously you used to be a member, and if you get on at 10 o'clock in the morning on the day of the sale, you'd be able to get inside a queue and buy the tickets. I think usually there would be circa 3,000 to 6,000 tickets available for the mid-tier of memberships that both myself and Jason have access to. And what's happened now is they basically just open up a ballot where anybody of that ticketing level can apply for a ticket in a 4-day window, and then they're just randomly given out. And it was obvious that the ballot had taken place by the people that we were sat with. Commonly, we sit with people, we see the same faces, we see a lot of recognize the same people, a certain type of fan, the ones that would like to go all of the time, and that they're vocal, they chant a lot. We usually sat right next to the away fans. There's a lot of banter. And this time was a lot more families, a lot more children. And that's not to say that that's not right, because obviously I love taking my children to the games as well. But I think one thing that it does impact is the crowd. I saw it when the Monaco game, so that's a friendly in the Emirates Cup. There's just it's the same song. It's Why Do We Hate Tottenham? Stand Up If You Hate Tottenham. It's the songs that are just kind of archetypal for Arsenal fans that don't mean anything in the context of the game that you're playing, and they're just a bit docile. And I do feel that those two things combined, so the lack of Ashburton Army and the difference in the crowd, made a big difference. I saw a picture after the game of the queues for the Armory. And they were out the door. They were massive by all accounts, and that actually tells me a lot about who I think is turning up to this game. It's more the people that don't get to go very regularly, and thus they are taking full advantage of the hospitality in the shop and all the other kind of things that come with it at the ground. Like I said, that's not a bad thing. Of course, I'd love more people to get to Arsenal games as possible, but one thing I do think it happens is our crowd, is our atmosphere, and I think we all know, as Arsenal fans that have watched games in the stadium, as soon as we do bad and our crowd turns against the side, it's only going to get worse. It very rarely gets better for us when the crowd are on the backs of the players. We saw it with Xhaka. And I just, last year was such, and me and you, Jason, were there for a lot of games last season, was the best it has ever been. It was electric. The atmosphere was crazy. There were so many great memories from that season, even when we didn't win it. It was my favorite season being an Arsenal fan in the ground, and I just don't want that to kind of go away, I think is where I'm feeling. So I'm quite emotive about it because I'm scared of where it could take us.
Yeah, it's I don't disagree with anything you said. Like, it's a difficult one because you want there to be new fans. You want everyone to be able to experience the Emirates. But you're right. There was, if we talk about exactly where we sit very close to the Ashburton Army. I think if you combine the volume of them and the number of people they had last year, then combined with what I would say aren't always the area we sit isn't always season ticket holders, but we're talking about common silver members, where we're always able to get tickets. And it's like when, we've sat in the same place, in the same area of the grounds, pretty much even in the same section, definitely always the same block in the section inside for years. I mean, I lost count how many years we've been going there. So you do recognize the people, and everyone else does the same thing too. So when you're sat with the Ashburton Army, and they have definitely helped generate that atmosphere, and then we're playing well. We're always singing. I mean, I'm singing for the first 5 minutes, and my voice goes. But you've got a particularly strong voice. Grev is one of the key figures that always starts chants. When you've got the Ashburton Army combined with all the regulars that sit there, and we're playing well, there is a vibe, there is an atmosphere, there is a click between those people, and the noise, it gets louder, the intensity gets more just by the crowd, and that is felt by the players, really clearly felt by the players. The problem with the ballot in this scenario, it doesn't hold that. It doesn't have that knowledge. They have not, I'm assuming, they have not built a computer algorithm that is looking at who's buying tickets and where they should be placed, and if they're evenly spacing them. Like, it was very clear that it was a different set of people sat in the area we have, which meant that you just had people who are coming to the games with different perspectives and different views on how they want to enjoy the game, and that's absolutely fine. But we lost something. We did lose something, and it was felt by you and myself. Like, I would say there was 4 people around a massive group who were starting chants or singing chants. It was me, you, Spence, and the guy in front, and maybe there might be one guy behind. But there was like five of us, and usually you would have 10, 20, 30, and then you've got Ashburton next to us as well. And that atmosphere just wasn't there. There were a lot more younger people around us, kids, let's be honest, and that's not a problem. But there was also a challenge in the clock end, particularly where everyone stands. No one sits in the clock end. Everyone stands. And I remember seeing, like, the guy in front was like saying to a guy 2 seats in front, like, sit down, because that kid, it's his first time here, like, he wants to see the game. And the guy was like, no. Like
this is the problem with that, because you can't sit down because the people in front of you aren't sitting down, and thus that needs to trickle down to 15 to 20 different people.
Yeah.
But not everyone can stand. Block, it's like, everyone stands, like, in
the whole block of 30 rows
in the clock end, right?
Yeah. So and like, I think to the right of me again, another a family who weren't as engaged with singing and stuff like that. They were engaged in the game, but not as much singing. And then everyone's allowed to do what they want when they come to the game. There's no rules. But I think we know from what Mikel has purposely tried to drill into the squad. He's tried to drill into the squad and into the fans and into the club in general, that increase of atmosphere. I think the ballot needs to be done better so that people that are coming to the games can come to the games to experience it in the way they want. That's absolutely fine. We need to identify how we find those people and give them the appropriate seating and allocation, and how you find the people that want the atmosphere that we want and can have that kind of allocation. whether that's just a simple survey when you buy the tickets, a survey question. Do you want to chant or sing chants? Yes or no? Like, or on a scale, how much singing are you going to be doing? Something really, I know this sounds stupid, but genuinely we need to find a way in which we don't lose that atmosphere. That's really, really important to the team's motivation. I'm trying to be really cautious. This is not about criticizing the people who came to the game and how they engaged in the game. Every fan is entitled to engage in the game in any way they want. But when there is a group of fans who do want an atmosphere and want to be able to have that ability to create an atmosphere for the benefit of the team and the team's performance, and to get behind the team when they go down as well, right? So when we went 1 goal down, usually we are right behind them as soon as we go down. There was a smuttering of that in our end, but never the same way it was when we usually let a goal in, when we get right back behind them. So we need to just find a way in which we can keep that. And so I've rambled on a long time about this actually, but I think it turns out I'm quite passionate about it. Actually, I didn't realize I was.
I think part of the reason why the ballot exists, though, right, was to mainly stop touts and fraudsters and stuff. And we've probably not got enough time to even talk about the absolute fiasco of the getting into the ground. Luckily, myself, Jason, and Spence were in early doors, but there was an absolute nightmare. The kickoff was delayed by 30 minutes because of it. And this is the ballot was brought in to stop touts, and I just can't understand how this is the solution they came up with. It feels like such a archaic, disparate, and unfair system to bring forward, when everyone who buys a ticket at Arsenal has a pass. You know the address and the person that pass is associated with. If it's buying multiple tickets and it's not that person coming in, then just ban them. I really don't understand it. Anyway, we could wax lyrical about all of this, I'm sure, for a whole podcast, right, Jace?
Yeah, I was just trying to. I was just looking at something because there was another point that I had. I wanted to check it. So there were a lot of empty seats. I noticed in the upper tier especially, and if we so we have access to silvers. We've also got reds. So we've gone in for the ballot for United and missed out on silvers. It was annoying. And then we missed out on reds. We've gone in for silver for Spurs, didn't get them. We've put our 2 reds in. We'll see if we get them. I've not got any hopes. But there were loads of empty seats. But then there's no tickets on the exchange. And I'm just sorry, it really annoys me. It really makes me angry because I want to be there. I want to be in the ground. I'm happy to pay the money. I don't care how much it is. Just let me have my ticket and let me get in the ground. If there's empty seats, let me go. And it's just really frustrating. I was counting handfuls, and it's not just like the odd 1 or seat. There were like sections of 4s and 5s and 2s and 3s, and then it was really disappointing to see in the upper tier. It made me quite angry because along with the ballot not quite working out at the moment, then you're seeing empty seats, and it's really frustrating when you're a fan who wants to be in the ground. Really frustrating because we can't go. Well, you've luckily got the room for or is it the
sensory
autism
room?
Sensory room. So the sensory room for United, but I haven't, and we've at the moment we've not got Spurs, and we might not get the Champions League games coming. So to know that there's potentially going to be empty seats in the ground, and I can't have a ticket, it infuriates me so much because all I want to do is get in there and support the team.
Yeah.
Sorry. Anyway,
that's right. I think I had another point now as well, because only just last thing then, just to say, we've been through a lot of dark days at Arsenal. We've been going for about 15 years, quite religiously. We've had the bad. We want the good, and I don't want to give up the good for some people that don't want to go to their 1 game a season when they can be bothered to turn up. But that is frustrating for me. The same as for you. I get that people want to have their heyday and come in and enjoy the experience, but I've dealt with playing Wigan and losing to Wigan. I've dealt with Champions League nights and being knocked out in the last 16. I've had my bad. I want my good.
Europa League.
Well, yeah, enough said. Right, let's move on to the parking lot, Jace. There's one big hole that you'd like to talk about in the Spurs team that is no longer there. Tell me what happened with Harry Kane at Bayern Munich.
Well, I just watched it and I thought it was. Well, it's not. I don't think you can say that. I made a joke. Has Harry cursed Bayern? But he only had 25, 15, or he didn't have that long on the pitch. He didn't really look. I think he only touched the ball a few times, and they clearly don't know how to play with him yet. He's not like. It's not like the muscle memory of Lewandowski kicks in for the rest of the Bayern team. They know how to find him. He's a different kind of player. So, but overall, Bayern were shocking. They got absolutely annihilated by Leipzig. Leipzig 3-0. So many even chances they didn't score, and I was seeing them counter through Bayern's sent right through the centre of Bayern's defence multiple times. So they didn't play well. I kind of wanted Bayern to win just so that we could see Harry Kane wins a trophy within his first game since leaving Spurs. That would have been quite funny, but yeah, just interesting to see him in another shirt and see him in another team. Yeah, has Harry cursed Bayern? Don't know. I guess we'll find out.
It's win-win though, right, Jace? Because even he'll win something eventually, but I do find it relatively funny at the moment that he can go in and you can't take Spurs out of you can take Kane out of Spurs, but you can't take the Spurs out of Kane. And he's obviously taken his losing mentality along with him into the Bundesliga Super Cup. Just funny. And I think that the best thing, you might not have seen it, there's a great clip of him. They had a penalty shout, I think penalty for Leipzig that they had. Bayern players crowded the referee. They're all obviously talking German, and he just looked like a deer in headlights. He was like, oh my God, what are they saying? I have no idea. How do I get involved with this? And decided just to keep his mouth shut and just stare open-mouthed.
Yeah, the Arsenal gentleman on Twitter, he posted a very funny kind of tweet, which is basically in German, and it basically translated to something along the lines of what Harry Kane was saying to the referee, which was, don't you know I'm the captain of the England national team? As in, Harry always got away with stuff in the Premier League because he was the England captain, and he's not going to be able to get away with it in Germany, which I found quite funny.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that hopefully he's never going to have another North London derby penalty is the best thing. The best thing.
Yeah, indeed. So yeah, maybe it's sour grapes from us, but we're kind of happy as well.
Maybe.
One last question. Is the undesirables training by themselves? Sorry, undesirables is what we called them because of the 4 PSG players that were training by themselves called the undesirables. And then we had the picture of Balogun, Suarez. Not Suarez. Cedric Suarez. Sorry, I was thinking of Luis Suarez. But Suarez, Balogun, Lokonga, and Tavares were clearly had a picture together that implied that they were training by themselves and not with the squad. My question to you, is that good for business for us?
No, I don't think it is. I think if you've got players that you want to sell, you want to put them in the best light, and putting them together and creating an environment of which you've got 4 relatively disengaged, angry young men who want to kind of get out. It just doesn't paint the right picture. I need them all to have the same attitude as Eddie Nketiah. Get your heads down, get part, play your part, do well in training, and you'll get picked. I think there was a quote from Eddie this week where he was basically hounding Arteta, going, "I'm starting. Look at what I'm doing in training. I am starting." And we're not seeing it from them. And I think it just devalues them a little bit in the market. I just don't think we're going to get anything good. I mean, other than Balogun, and even then, I think we're going to go less than the 50 million that I think we deserve for him based on the market rate for other going strikers. But we need to sell. We're going to have to sell, and that's the thing. Those two things coupled together make it very easy for other clubs to lowball us in that park.
Yeah, I agree, but I also think it's something about their attitude that's why they're not training with us as well.
We don't want to bring down the rest of the squad, right? I'm guessing.
Well, I said I don't know anything about their attitude, to be clear. However, I do know about Rob Holding's attitude. And he isn't going to be a player that I feel is probably in the squad and staying with us either. But he's still training with the first team. He's come on in pre-season. He's had minutes. He was on the bench at the Community Shield. And so there's yes, Rob's been at the club for a very, very long time. He's big with the squad, as you were saying to me the other day. He's loved. But, he's still giving everything. He's still doing exactly what Arteta wants of him, even if he's not as good as Arteta wants him to be. And so he still has that privilege of being able to train with the squad, but they don't. And that must be for a reason.
Yeah, I mean, Rob Hoddin's a consummate professional, right? So, yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any situation where he would be ostracized, even if he's on the way out the door. Yeah. Right. That wraps up another episode for us. I'm going to do my new thing that I started doing the last one, Jace, and I know that you know how to reply. If you're watching this on YouTube, Jace, what should the audience do?
So if you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment, ask us a question. Please give us a thumbs up, not a thumbs down. And if you're Grev, if you're listening on any of our podcast providers, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, what should you do?
So Jay, if you're looking at your screen, you're on Spotify, you'll see a little star bar that will come up, and it'll give you the option to go 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 stars. I'll tell you one thing: I don't want to see anything less than 5. I want to see great reviews. If you're doing 4 or below, then tell me about it, because I'm going to be turning up to your house, asking you why. I want to know. I want to know how you could ever slander this podcast for a 4-star or less. So 5-star reviews only, please.
Unless you live further than about 350 miles away.
Yeah, then I don't want to do that. Exactly. The Tesla won't go that far. I'll find a supercharger on the way, I'm sure. Right. Thank you very much for listening and enjoying our content. We'll see you again next week when we play Crystal Palace. Until then, goodbye, good evening, and thank you very much.
Cheers, guys. Have a great week. Speak to you later.